So this is a video for soon-to-be best friend in the whole world who's going to help me fix my code. And for anybody else that manages to see it along the way. Right, so jump into solo. Don't worry about the graphics, okay? It's just base mesh. It's not even, as you can tell, it's not even literally gone through and UV wrapped, right? So what happens is here you've got this wheel which has at the moment 5 symbols. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now obviously there's a double here. I know. Yes, I know. Like I said, meshes, static meshes are still to be coming, right? And what you can do is you can go through and you can spin the UV the disk, and then you can lock in addresses, right? So for example, that was, if I go to here, you can see locked 0, which is the first one. For some reason, yes, everything starts at 0. Glyph ID is 3, syllable is cow, right? Which is that one. Now, if I spin this back to, say, this one here, and then I lock that one in, I have, again, spinning here, here's all the degrees and everything like that, locked in 1, Glyph ID 3, right? So we've gone from, if I scroll up, that might be an issue too, hang on. Yeah, locked glyph 1, right? So we're locked glyph 1, and now this should be locking glyph 0, and now this should lock glyph 1. So lock glyph 1, perfect. Glyph ID is 3, symbol is still cow. Okay, so this is me bug fixing and trying to fix it and going great. Right, so obviously at the end of the day you can see the symbols are the same. Now, for example, if I was to go in here, don't worry about that, it's just the UV. If I go into the solo player game, my phone's ringing, but who cares? If I go into here, for example, right, locked symbol is, the symbol for that is A. So it is noting the symbol when it first locks in, and then this symbol is A as well. So it's not updating the actual symbol. So let's check out the blueprint. Right, blueprint portal. I suspect it has to do with this part over here. Don't worry about that, that's just a temporary one. I'm guessing it has to do with the store the current glyph. So what happens in the event? Here we've got the lock glyph, right? Goes through, finds out what the glyph is at that current degree. Right, so we go to that, and then it stores it as the current glyph index. Right, so it stores as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then after that it comes back here and it sets the current slot as the length of the array, which is obviously 0 because it's just starting. And then we go through and it then brings up the table. It brings up the current glyph ID or index, which is obviously the glyph that it saved it as. And if we actually come over to here, you can see the glyphs. Right, we've got row 0, row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. Right? So what it does is it goes through, brings up the current glyph ID. Say we saved glyph 3. It adds row underscore to it because that's the default. So it becomes row underscore 3. And then it goes through, puts that into the row name, brings out the details. If there's no glyph, it says row not found. That's just debugging. Finds it, and then it goes through and it breaks it, and then it stores that into the static mesh, turns it visible, and then plays the sound. And it uses this int here to basically go through and decide whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on glyph count, which is a bug. Hang on a sec. Right, so I just changed it. It should be glyph index as far as I'm aware. Right, because that's what we want to bring up. No, it should be current slot. Wait a sec again. So I'm sure that's supposed to be current slot, but it does go through and it does cause my system to not work. And it doesn't, for some reason, then it doesn't go through and produce. So it says lock 6, but it doesn't go through and it doesn't continue here. It doesn't go to the moving validation phase. We'll keep going. You get you to have a look at that too, actually, maybe. Right, so once that happens, right, it goes through, it then stores the current glyph, which is basically it goes through. I could probably shrink this down. And shrink this down. Right, a lot of this is debuggers just so that we can find errors. Right, so it goes through, gets the current ID index, puts the row in front of it, amends it, brings it up on the table, accesses the glyph table, and then goes through. If the glyph's not found, has that. If it does, it goes through, adds it to the strut array. And by the way, it's also checking to make sure that the strut array is less than 6. Because it starts at 0, right? So it goes through and checks that. Maybe that should be 7, I'm not sure. And then this is the debug here where it goes through and basically says the glyph ID, syllable ID, blah, blah, blah. And then goes through and then does the return node, which then brings it back to here, which then does the static mesh. And what it's supposed to do is update glyph 1, which is literally just down here. Glyph 1 with the actual, with the mesh from the break. So it brings up the model, which is the static mesh, sets it to visible, and then it makes the locking sound, which we've all heard works. And then comes down here, comes to a branch. The branch basically goes through, checks to make sure that it's less than 6 for the current slot, because the current slot starts at 0. If it is, it then goes through and or equal to or less than, I should say. If it is greater than or equal to, it goes to moving validation, which is the glyphs. If not, basically goes through and sets the slot, current slot plus 1, right? Which is basically here, and which is also back here and here as well, blah, blah, blah. I notice that we're currently setting the slot here. That could be an issue. Maybe that's the problem. As for the validating, basically it comes along, it validates and says it's validating address. It sets it to yes, so it basically locks the system for now so that you can't keep whacking enter and putting in more glyphs. It then goes to set the glyph index to 0, sets it to row underscore glyph ident, which would be at the moment would be 0, brings up the table, finds it, goes through, breaks it here, right? It breaks it here, and then here it puts the glyph structure array, saves that for a loop, or puts that into a loop. And then basically this one comes along here and basically compares this to the 2 to make sure that there's a match. And if there's a match in the name or a match in the symbols, the 6 symbols, if they all match, it basically comes along and says valid address, bug testing again, and then goes and activates the portal, which works. If it doesn't, it comes along and it says invalid address, well it's supposed to, plays a sound, which is a duh sound effect, and then resets the system so you can go back and then try and put in another series of addresses. So the reset's easy. It's just boot from pedestal, which basically kicks you out of the pedestal, clears the array, goes to set the visibility for all of these as invisible, sets the current slot to 0, sets the portal back to inactive, or portal as active is back to clear or no, ready and reset, and then return node. And then it's basically ready for you to go back to the pedestal, go back into it, and then try and put another 6 addresses. So that's the problem. There's a few issues here. There's about 2 or 3 bugs that I'm finding along the way, and I'm thinking this is probably one of them here. No, actually, no, that's right, because it's checking to make sure it's less than 7, and then it's setting it to 0, which would be hopefully what it would be, and then it goes through. No, that's right, that's actually working, yeah. But yeah, at the end of the day, there's a couple of bugs here. Hopefully I've explained it good enough for you. If you're seeing anything that jumps out, obviously you keep it to yourself, and then I'll pay you, and you can go through and you can fix my portal, and then we become best buddies, because I'm trying to build a game and I'm going to need a bit of help. Yeah. Thanks.